There's such a huge lot which is attaching moral reference points to it. Is it that these are live-in relationships that have come to be so toxic, or it can happen in any relationship at all?
See, I mean, the only plausible explanation for it to repetitively being seen in live-in relationship is that A, the social conformity, B, the having taken this step, possibly the women is ostracized to the extent that all the support system is cut off. Absolutely. She doesn't have access to the parents. Unfortunately, this girl was an orphan. But she should have and could have built up a support system. So when we are in relationships, I don't think it is fair to be sucked up in the relationship in a manner that we are engulfed in a kind of a Stockholm syndrome, where when the lines are crossed and people or the beloved is trespassing into your personal space, because it would be unfair to think that such a gruesome act can be impromptu and out of nowhere. Now when we do a autopsy of the situation, we find that there were many telltale signs and red flags, and we choose to ignore them because we are so caught up in the sanctity of the relationship, and we are so cut off from the support system, society and friends.
And that was exactly the case with Shraddha Walkar and Saraswati, exactly the same playbook playing out, where you have a next to zero support system who you can confide in, go and speak with. Dr. Dinesh Rao, from here on, the role of the forensic, especially where the investigation comes into question, because the accused now says that she killed herself, he only disposed of the body parts. Now, what would be the role of the forensic here to actually pin the case on him?
Forensic role is very vital in this case. The reason being is because this is not an intact body. First thing is, one is the first duty of the investigating officer is to collect all the body parts, which and all places which he alleged to have disposed. These are the area, whatever will be the state of the body parts, that has to be collected, and that has to be kept in a normal anatomical position by the said examining doctor. And first we need to establish that what exactly is the cause of death. Is the statement given by the so-called accused and the actual injuries found on the body are consistent or not? That has to be documented. And second thing is, what is the time since death? That is, when exactly was the person killed, and what the body severing of the body or cutting into pieces was. Is it the actual cause of death, or it is after killing with some other means and then the body was severed, and what is the time after which the body was severed? That is a post-mortem injury or anti-mortem injury, and the fatal injury. All these things has to be clearly established. This is so possible when we collect all the body parts and then keep it in a normal analytical point and examine the cut ends of the tissues to understand what type of weapon he has used. This is most important aspect. And the third important aspect is to correlate with the crime scene and the weapon and the individual who has committed it. So whatever, if the blood stains on the clothing are present, that has to be collected from the place where the body he has killed, and that particular area the samples has to be collected. If he had established, because in Shraddha Walkers what we saw is the time since death was concealed. They has kept in a refrigerator where the time of death was been advanced. That means it has been concealed. Whereas in this case, I think it is not done so. But the body has been immediately after death, he has cut into pieces, and it was no such attempt was made to store the body so that the time since death is prolonged or concealed. So that has to be established, the relation of the scene to the body and the accused, plus establishing the cause of death and the time since death. And more important, if in such a state, identity is also important. DNA is also very important.
Right.
Because all these things is the actual method and standard procedure where the investigating officer has to look into. That is the only way where he can put him for conviction. Yeah.
Mr. P.K. Jain, the suspect here might be given a narco test or a lie detector test. Both of them not evidence where the court comes into question. Now, the reports of a brain mapping test are, however, treated as admissible evidence. Do you think the police could benefit from that?
The police will try, if they are able to establish a case with all the circumstantial and forensic evidence, that would be sufficient enough, because they have to link, number one, the body parts, number two, the weapon, number three, the situation, number four, the various parts they have to be collected, and all that. All that exercise will be done if they can establish that it was it was committed by him, he is directly linked to the evidence, then probably there will be no need for the narco test and all that. If all these things are not connected in the first place, then probably the police would like to go in for a narco test or a brain mapping test, etc. That can be done. Lie detector test in this kind of a case may not be very useful. Narco test probably will be. That is one part. Second part is, I would see, one of the reasons why people are now committing crimes like this, because they think that they are not accountable to law. I mean, the case goes on for 7-8 years. After that, their system of appeal, then if the capital punishment is awarded, then a whole lot of appeals and clemency petition and all that. It takes about 15-16 years for a person to send to
Right.
gallows. So the justice system has to be expedited. It has to be deterrent and effective. In the absence of which, the people are just getting away with this kind of a horrific murder and many other horrific crimes.
Right. Mr. Raheja, I want to pull you in for one quick question before, I move on from the story. And that is, what's the mindset of a man who conducts a crime such as this? And more so, over and over again, one does so many shows on why is it that it takes a crime such as this to raise the issue of domestic violence, women, why do they continue to stay in abusive, toxic relationships?
So the answer to the first question is that this is definitely a debauched mind, which is a psychopathic mind suffering possibly from antisocial personality disorder, where the personality is usually like a Jekyll and Hyde. Such people are extreme charmers in one situation, and they can be batterers and swinging back to being the charmer, and they create a kind of an aura in which when they are perpetrating and doing and creating this atmosphere, the victim unfortunately is not able to move on, because it is playing the game of producing guilt and then trying to psychologically be so intimidating and so interfering and so engaging with the victim that the person is not able to pull out. Exactly just how things change with Stockholm syndrome. So this is a prolonged Stockholm syndrome. The person is not just able to get out, but also is not able to recognize the fine line where the intervention was most necessary, which is why I'm continuously saying that such crimes can only be prevented when we have a support system. So do not cut yourself off. It is important to keep talking to your family. It's important to keep talking to some friends who would know exactly what's happening, and just the whole way the society is progressing, where we shut ourselves off to say, why should I interfere into somebody else's life? This happened after 3 days when the stench came. The neighbors were brave enough to do what they did. But I think if we were more perceptive, and if there was a system of mobilizing to just look around to see what was happening, maybe we'll catch things much earlier, to see what kind of abuse is happening in the neighborhood, what kind of domestic violence is happening, and intervention thereof.